We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday. I had some shit going on yesterday. We heard about this big story yesterday where Donald Trump and his lawyers went to the judge and said, "Hey, you know what? With regards to this bond I have to post, this $464 million by March 25th, yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that." Apparently, he went to 30 banks and surety companies, and they all said, yeah, nah, that's not going to happen. We were all a little surprised when he got the 91 million from Chubb, but apparently Chubb turned him down on the $464 million. The problem with this is for Donald Trump, it's a pickle to be sure, but it's also incredibly embarrassing, which is probably the worst thing you can do to Donald Trump or any other narcissist. He spent a lot of time telling us, oh, I got all kinds of money. In fact, in court, he said he had $400 million in cash. Well, clearly he doesn't. Could he get indicted for perjury? Yeah, I suppose he could, but with all the problems going on now, I think they'll focus on the shit at hand. So Donald Trump is in trouble. He can't come up with the $464 million by March 25th. Nobody's going to give him a bond. Nobody's going to give him a loan. So what happens then? Well, shortly after that, Letitia James goes to the court and says we need to start seizing properties and start liquidating properties. And again, that's probably the worst punishment you could give Donald Trump because he's being exposed for who he truly is as opposed to who he says he is. He says he's a hugely wealthy billionaire, but if he can't come up with the 400 million, clearly that's a lie. And I guess none of us are surprised that he lied about this. Fact is, I've been talking about this for some time. I've suggested all along he's not a billionaire, and now the truth is coming to the surface. Now, there are a lot of people out there that will say to me, yeah, but Vladimir Putin or the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia or Elon Musk or somebody, they'll just give them the money. Why would they do that? I mean, the only reason these people would give anybody money is if there was some return. If you think these guys are all just Donnie's best buddies, you'd be mistaken, especially when we're talking about $500 million. You need something in return or some kind of security for putting up that money. Since he doesn't have the cash, and since he doesn't have properties that have enough equity to cover that amount, that can't be it. The other situation is, well, maybe influence. Maybe he's peddling influence. And that's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is he has no influence anymore. If he was president of the United States, I get it. If there was any prospect of him winning in November, I get it. But he's not president and he can't win in November. And all these very wealthy people understand that completely. Now, there may be people out there that say, well, Donald Trump could win. But the facts say otherwise, and it's getting worse every day. And these people that have that money, they see that too. They're not going to take a risk on $500 million. And if Donald Trump can't provide any influence, well, then he's fucking worthless and people will cut bait on him. And that's kind of what's happening. I just want to answer another question. I've answered this 100 times and people keep saying it. Yeah, but Jared Kushner's got $2 billion from the Saudi Arabian country and he'll give them the money. Now listen very carefully. Jared Kushner didn't get handed $2 billion. Jared Kushner was given the job to manage $2 billion for the Saudis. He doesn't own the $2 billion. He can't do whatever he wants with the $2 billion. He's got to manage it. And for managing it, they're paying him like $25 million a year. So the idea that Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are going to bail out Donald Trump, not going to happen. They don't have the money to do it. It's not their money. And I'll be honest with you, if they fuck around with the Saudi money, God help their souls, because the Saudis and the Russians, they don't fuck around when you owe them money. It's not like they take you to court and you appeal it to the Supreme Court. They're going to get that money or they're going to get you. So you can bet that Jared Kushner isn't going to fuck around and embezzle a $500 million. That's just not going to happen. And they're in the same situation too. Why give Donnie money if it's just getting flushed down the toilet? He's not going to be president again. He can't do anything now. He has no money or property to back it up. There is no good reason to give Donnie any kind of loan or any kind of money. Now, if something happens between now and March 25th where he gets the money, um, surprisingly, I don't think that will happen, honestly. But if it does, so what? That means he's going to be deeply in debt to whoever gave him that money. And that takes us to another situation. Is Donald Trump a security risk? If somebody else gives him a ton of money and he's deeply in debt, that's one sure red flag when somebody's in government that's a problem. Remember Justice Kavanaugh when he was being confirmed. He owed a lot of money and then surprisingly somebody paid it off. You know why they paid it off? Because if we had a Supreme Court justice that owed all kinds of money, that is a security risk. That's somebody who's set up for blackmail or some other kind of intimidation. So even if Donald Trump does get the money from somebody else, he's still an immense problem because he is a huge security risk. All right, we have a number of emails, so let's get to it. First of all, good morning. About this banning TikTok in the US. Let's say it does get banned in the United States and Americans can no longer download the app in the US. Well, there are 140 other countries where it won't be banned. And there's this neat thing called VPN where you can change your location to other countries. So all Americans would have to do is change their location and have full use of the platform. Stephanie. Yeah, that's one option. I just don't honestly think they're going to shut it down. There's nothing good that can come from shutting it down other than um, politicians taking the truth out of the narrative. That may be the one reason or the one thing they want, or they want to cater to Facebook and Elon Musk. But other than that, there's not a lot of positive to doing this. As I've said, there's 170 million people that are on the app. And when you piss off half the country, that's a problem. Just ask the Republicans. They did that very same thing, actually, more than half of the American public when they overturned Roe v. Wade. I just don't see the Senate being stupid enough to run this through. There's no reason for it to happen. All right. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate the email. Next email. Hey, Mike, just a quick note to say that I agree wholeheartedly with one of the emails from Monday's show saying that Trump does have influence up for sale. He clearly has influenced Republicans in Congress not to fund Ukraine. And at some point, someone could decide that's worth paying for if they haven't already. He has tremendous influence over Congress. Just look at Mike Johnson and Lindsey Graham, two of many Trump cult followers who would lick a dirty floor or worse if he told them to. Okay, I get your point, but here's what you have to consider. Influence over Congress, specifically the House of Representatives. They only have a 2-seat margin right now. They're going to have a hell of a time passing anything between now and the election. And come the election, chances are the Democrats are going to take control of the House. So he might try to sell influence over Congress, but they're not going to be accomplishing anything anyway. And they're only going to be in office for what, another 8 months. Is that worth $500 million? I don't think so. All right, going on. He has the entire Republican Congress by the balls, unfortunately, and that influence is worth big money. I guess we'll find out soon if he can actually cash in. Best wishes, Vicky. As I said, Vicky, I understand your point, and you make a good point. I just don't think there's enough meat on the bone for them. Like I say, they got 8 months in office. They've got a slim majority. They're not going to get anything accomplished anyway. So what's going to happen? What are they going to do to benefit somebody enough to give Donald Trump a $500 million? I don't see it. If I'm missing it, let me know. Hi, Mike. I hope everything is great. It's 21:30. That's military time here in Sweden, and Swedish state news has just been shown on TV. There's a lot of talk about Putin's huge election victory and how China congratulates a popular victory. Well, we all understand that it's a rigged election and nothing else. Problems are piling up for the power hungry maniac. But what makes me right is the catastrophic interview with Sweden's former foreign minister, who describes how extremely worrying Trump's possible victory in the U.S. presidential election is. They are on prime time and worry that the population of Sweden quite unnecessarily. We talk about state television without profit requirements, which describes the situation as extremely worrying in the USA. Totally sick. Not a word about his lawsuits, not a word about his low Republican support and his lack of connection to reality. So you see, it's not just in the US that we struggle with media that are abysmal and unwilling to describe a not so exciting truth. Before long, he is bankrupt. Before long, he is finally accountable for his frauds. I enjoy it. 500 billion reasons to smile. All the best, Krister. And Krister comes from Sweden. Yeah, I'm not surprised that whether we have media in this country or media across the world, they're missing it because they're doing the same thing too. Whether they're nonprofit or not, they're still trying to create viewership. And it's much easier to create some turmoil than it is to tell the truth. I'm sorry that you have to deal with it, but thankfully you can come to people like me on the Rational Boomer podcast or other people like me and get some truths. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Sweden won't hear it because they're listening to their media. The only thing I can say to those folks is okay, you keep talking your talk and thinking what you're thinking and agonizing and getting anxious about all this stuff. But come November, when we have the election, it'll be done. And then please tell me what you were thinking. I mean, that's the end result is we got to get this done, get him out of the narrative, out of the equation, get the Republicans out of the way and get back to things as normal. It's a little hard for people outside of this country to understand what's going on unless they have people inside. Your media has to listen to our media, and our media is fucked. So there's a lot of efforts being put forth to mislead or misinform people, not only in this country, but across the world. Fact of the matter is, the facts are there, the information is there. If you're hungry for it and interested in it, you can dig it out. Or you can just listen to me or other people like me on the podcast or on TikTok. Thanks, Krister. Hi, Boomer. Now, I don't want to seem greedy, but the early bird eats the worm. In the Boomer Soul Administration, I want to offer my services. I'd be great as the minister of weed. I kiddingly said that Old Soul and I should just go on the TikTok party and run for president and vice president. I was kidding. I don't know that I'd be a good politician. Old Soul might be, but not this knucklehead. He goes on to say, but if there's a secretary of statements of the obvious, I'd be pretty good at that too. I just want to serve the people. Best garage door, Jeff. P.S. I'm recommending that you run as the Boomer Soul ticket. Then you resign after 2 years and let Soul run the damn thing. Well, I could do that. Why not just let Soul run the whole goddamn thing from the beginning? Uh, it would probably be much better. Like I've always said, I'm not really a good politician. I don't listen to shit. I'm not diplomatic. I hate fucking meetings. I hate bureaucracy. I hate red tape. And I'm just going to say whatever comes in my head. That doesn't play very well in politics. I know that. And I'm fine with that. I've never had any desire to be in politics. Now, Old Soul, she is diplomatic. I think she'd be a better choice for just about anything than me. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, Mike, I'm a little slow on the uptake. Maybe you can explain this to me. Dirty Diaper Donnie had his lawyers say he can't come up with the almost $500 million to fight Judge Engeron's verdict. Isn't this the same fucking retard that has said on countless occasions his wealth exceeds $4.5 billion? He can't liquidate 10% of that? I've always been pretty good at math, but I can't figure this one out. Do you think his irrational, idiotic, blind sheep followers are finally going to figure out that he's a pathological liar? No. Ha ha ha. Who am I kidding? They'll believe whatever lame bullshit excuse he feeds them. Time for the orange turd to come up with another stupid idea like $400 sneakers to grift his followers. The closer we get to the election, the deeper the shit he's trying to tread through. Lucky for him, the collective intelligence of his supporters is comparable to that of a kumquat. It's always a pleasure to listen to Mike. Keep fighting the good fight, Paul. Well, thank you. Yeah, he's said many times that he's a very wealthy man. He's got so much money, you wouldn't even fucking believe it. But he doesn't have enough to come up with this bond. And it should be easy, right? He's worth 4 billion, 5 billion, 8 billion, whatever the fuck he says. He says he had 400 million in cash. Um, and all of a sudden he doesn't have any money. Was he committing perjury on the stand when he said he had $400 million? Yeah, I guess he was. I don't know whether they'll do anything about it or not. But the fact is, Donald Trump was never a billionaire, never had that much money. Everything he has is pretty well leveraged, so he doesn't have a lot of equity in his shit. It's finally caught up with him. Nobody can help him. Nobody wants to help him. He doesn't have the money. He fucked around and he found out. He finally realized he can't talk himself out of every single thing. He's going to be learning that lesson a lot over the next coming months between now and November. It's going to get very ugly for him and it's going to get unpleasant. And as I've said, it's going to embarrass him. And that is the absolute worst thing you can do to a narcissist. So get ready. You're going to hear some crazy shit. You're going to see some crazy shit. Or you're going to see Donnie keel over or get sick. It's hard for any human to take this kind of pressure, but when you're a fucked up piece of shit like Donald Trump, it's going to be even harder. All right, the next email. Hi, Mike. I just read a couple articles about Donnie's attempt to get a bond in the fraud case. Both articles said the same thing. Donnie had his attorneys file a motion with the court asking to be able to appeal without putting up the bond because he can't get one. Apparently, this supposed multi-billionaire just doesn't have the cash to put up and can't find a surety company that will. He's tried over 30 companies, but they all want to secure the bond with cash and won't accept property. I wonder why. It's almost like what we have been saying for months is true. He's a broke ass bitch, and all his properties are mortgaged to the point where he can't convince anyone to lend on them anymore. Apparently, it is a surprise to Donnie that he can't get anyone to give him credit to appeal a case in which he was found to have defrauded banks and creditors. An appeal he can't win, by the way. So when you're putting that money in behind Donald Trump, you're guaranteed a loss. All right, now Hawk, who is another TikTok creator, Hawk on TikTok pointed out that recent polls show 80% of all voters don't support January 6th or the actions of the Trumplafucks who were there. That's more bad news for Trump, who has been praising the Jan Sixers and talking about pardoning all of them, as well as wanting to prosecute all the people involved in bringing the January Sixers to justice. Yeah, that's not a good stance to take. It's not it's as bad or maybe worse than supporting overturning Roe v. Wade. He keeps picking up on the bad fucking decisions, and it's going to work against him. Trust me on this. This is why he can't win in November. Now, if the Republicans can't find another candidate, this could be a landslide victory for Biden. I'm expecting it will. I'm hoping the blue wave is as big as we are predicting. The Republicans could be finished as a major party. if they lose big this cycle. I'll get the popcorn ready. This is going to be fun. Thanks, Eric. And Eric, you're absolutely right. That's, I'm no psychic or soothsayer. I don't know what's going to happen in November. All I can do is take a look at the facts. And the facts tell me that Donald Trump, if he is the nominee, he is going to get wiped off the map. It's going to be a landslide victory for Biden. And why? Well, he's going to be convicted of a crime. He's going to be a broke ass bitch. He's going to continue to say crazy shit like, oh, this country's in for a bloodbath if I don't get elected, or supporting January 6ers when nobody in this country does. He's doing everything he can to bury himself, and none of it translates into more votes in November. Keep in mind, in 2020, he lost by 7 million votes and quite a number of electoral votes, too. Since that time, he has done nothing to improve his lot. He's done everything to cost him support and votes. So naturally, the facts would tell you that Donald Trump is going to lose in a big motherfucking way. That's all I know. Based on what I know, he's going to lose. He's going to lose big. Based on what I know, I'm not sure he'll be the nominee because I don't know that he can physically or emotionally handle it. But we all have to wait and see. This point where he has to come up with $500 million, and if he doesn't get it and they start liquidating his properties, get ready for Donald Trump to lose his shit. Get ready for him to break down because this will be the ultimate embarrassment for him, and it'll be something he can't take. And then after that, within less than 3 weeks, he's going on trial for 34 criminal charges. The next month or so is going to be very bad for Donald Trump. There are no bright, sunny skies for him. Everything is bad. Everything gets darker every day. So we've been talking about this money that Donald Trump is supposed to come up with. Trump told the New York State Court that obtained the approximately $464 million needed to meet bond on the appeal of his civil fraud conviction is a practical impossibility. That was a new filing on Monday. Now, keep that in mind. This $464 million that he is supposed to put up for a bond, it is just so that he qualifies to appeal the case. Now, if he doesn't come up with the money, if he doesn't post the bond, not only will they start liquidating his properties, he has forfeited an opportunity to appeal the case, which is probably just as well. He's not going to win an appeal. He has appeal pending in the E. Jean Carroll case for $91 million. But again, he's going to lose that too. When it's all said and done, he's going to lose $600 or $700 million just on these two cases. But keep in mind, there's more lawsuits coming. Every day there's more lawsuits. They're going to take every penny, every property Donald Trump has ultimately. He will be the essence of a broke ass bitch. Now, of course, the New York State judge convicted Trump of civil fraud on February 16th for falsifying the business records of his organization for years. The court ordered Trump to pay $355 million to cover the amount he gained due to his fraud, plus interest. In total, Trump was ordered to pay out more than $464 million, and that amount is going up every day. I've heard different things like $120,000 a month that he has to pay. Somebody else said it was like $17 a second that he has to pay in interest. Yeah, he's going to have a tough time getting out from under this, especially since he doesn't have the fucking money. So Trump appealed the decision on February 26. Unless Trump wants New York Attorney General Letitia James to seize his assets, he must post bond by providing the court with the full amount owed in the judgment. He sent a notice that he was going to appeal, but that appeal can't take effect until he puts up the money. If he doesn't put up the money, there is no appeal, and Letitia James goes and gets his shit. Now, after countless hours negotiating with one of the largest insurance companies in the world, obtaining an appeal bond in the full amount is not possible under the circumstances presented. After contacting 30 bond companies, few of them would even consider a bond of anything approaching 464 million, and those that do will not accept hard assets such as real estate as collateral, but will only accept cash or cash equivalents such as marketable securities, according to the brief. And of course, that makes sense. They give you a $500 million, you give them a bunch of properties, and you don't pay them back, which he won't because he'll lose the appeal. Now they have to put in all the work and effort to try to sell these properties, and these are properties that Donald Trump has owned, so God knows how he's fucked it up. You can look at the mortgages, but he's probably got other fucking loans on this stuff that nobody knows about. It's not a good bet for a surety company or a bank to back Donald Trump to this degree based on what he wants to put up for collateral. Trump's brief also complains that the bond companies that could provide him with 464 million require collateral totaling 120% of the bond. So that means we'll give you $464 million, but the collateral you have to put up against this bond is 120% of the actual bond. So $464 million is what he needs. He'd have to put up a bond for $557 million. You might as well ask him for $100 billion because he just doesn't have the money. Now, what this means is that Trump, who has claimed to be worth $10 billion in the past, does not have enough available cash to put up as collateral to obtain an insured bond of 464 million or 557 million if he's got to put up 120% of the collateral. He could theoretically put his properties up as collateral, but bond companies won't accept physical assets, according to an affidavit submitted by insurance broker Gary Giulietti that is cited by Trump's lawyers. He's in a fix. The final option would be a fire sale of his properties, including office towers, golf courses, and resorts. But the brief argues this would inevitably result in massive, irrecoverable losses. Instead, Trump wants the bond requirement for his appeal to be waived or reduced and asks for the court to grant oral arguments on the waiver. If, however, the appellate court does not intervene, Trump will be required to pay the full judgment on March 25th. And if he fails to make that payment, then James will be able to seize assets equaling the amount owed. So, do you think the court's going to give him a way out, a loophole? Set aside the bond that he has to post or cut it down to a lesser amount? I don't honestly think so, based on how Donald Trump has behaved through this whole process, based on the fact that he lied in court talking about how much money he had. I mean, keep in mind, one of the reasons he was fined $464 million, it was based on what Donald Trump had in available assets. Donald Trump on the stand did say he had $400 million available. Clearly, that was a lie. Clearly, that was perjury. So Donald Trump put himself in this situation. He tried to make himself out to be a big man. So they figured, well, we're going to have to find in a big amount in order to make a point with this dumb fuck. So once again, Donald Trump did it to himself. He could have said, well, I'm broke. I can't pay you anything. And it probably would have been a smaller amount. I don't know how much smaller, but would have been smaller nonetheless. But because Donald Trump has a fragile ego and he constantly has to brag about stuff he doesn't have, this is what caused him this problem. Donald Trump is in really a tight spot. I was surprised when he got the 91 million, but I knew after that it was going to be hard. $500 million is a lot of cash. And I can't imagine Chubb wants to continue in this process. They're probably having second thoughts about the 91 million. And why they gave that to him was beyond me, unless they gave him or he gave them an incredible amount of equity in some of his properties, because he clearly It didn't have the cash. So anyway, it's going to be interesting. We've got 5 days now before he needs to come up with that figure. If he doesn't come up with a figure, Letitia James is going to start going after his properties and liquidating them. And there's not a fucking thing he can do about it. And that is going to drive him nuts. He's going to try to get them to slow it down or put a stay on this while the appeal is in the works. But the fact of the matter is, what's a stay going to do? Is it going to give you an extra month so you can come up with the money? Donnie's not coming up with the money, whether you gave him a day or 10 years. He doesn't have the wherewithal to fucking do that. So putting a stay on it isn't going to help. Um, and frankly, with what's going on in the state of New York, the money issue with these lawsuits is very specific and very conservative. It's not like there's a lot of leeway the judges can have. Oh, Donnie, we'll cut you a break. You don't have to put up any money. We'll trust you for it. Nobody trusts Donald Trump for fucking anything. I don't think he'll get the stay, and I don't think he'll get the bond waived. Why would he? Why would he? He's already posted one bond, two bonds. He's got to pay this one. And this is where it's coming down to where the rubber hits the road. Told you before with narcissists, they go along, they fly high for a while, but then things start to fall apart. Things start to fall apart and they spiral out of control until they crash. We are looking at Donald Trump moments before the crash, at least financially speaking. And then when the criminal cases start in April, that's going to be another crash. Donald Trump can't continue doing what he's been doing all of his life forever, especially now in the circumstances he's in. It's going to come to a halt. It's going to stop, and it's going to stop with a crash. And we are finally getting to that point where that crash is coming. So don't be fooled by the people that he's going to have some savior. He'll pull it out of the fire at the last minute. He's done it in the past. I understand that. But that can't go on forever, especially when your Lord and Savior gets weaker and weaker and crazier every fucking day. There are people stepping away from him. And when people get in this situation, you find a lot of folks cutting bait and running for the hills. There is no loyalty unless they can get something out of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump doesn't have anything to get. So, all right, we will take a quick break and we'll be right back. Well, Stephanie Grisham, she is the former White House communications director for Donald Trump from 2019 till April of 2020. She was on CNN's television show with Aaron Burnett last night. And this, she comes out after we hear that Donald Trump can't come up with the $464 million. Now, Grisham has some insights, maybe understands Donald Trump's personality and how he might react to things. The money is due next week. James has vowed to seize Trump's properties if he fails to pay. This is what we know. Now, Stephanie Grisham said, I think if it were to happen, 40 Wall Street is probably the one that he would hate it. That's an understatement. He would freak the fuck out. Or if it was Trump Tower. I was thinking about him coming up with the money, and I thought there was an easy way to come up with the money, but he apparently didn't think about it. He loves telling us how Mar-a-Lago is worth well over $1 billion. Well, if that's true, even though we know it's not, if that were true, you would think you could get a second mortgage for $500 million on that over $1 billion property. Wonder why he didn't think of that. Probably because it's another bit of bullshit. Anyway, now Stephanie Grisham goes on to say, but I think if she tried to seize Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster or Trump Tower even, those are his babies. What would really hurt, she said, is if Trump lost ownership of any of his properties that have golf courses associated with them. You've got the Sterling Golf Course in Virginia, any of the properties with the golf courses, I think would absolutely devastate him. Grisham added that for Trump, who has frequently bragged about his wealth, having his inability to pay $464 million aired in public is going to be embarrassing. And that goes without saying. And as I've said, when you're dealing with a narcissist, especially one to the level of Donald Trump, this is problematic for him. He spent his whole life telling people how he's a billionaire, how he's powerful, how he's smart, how he's strong. And now it's being revealed that he's none of those things. He is the loser that deep in his mind he knows he is. All this bullshit and bluster is just to cover that up. Daddy and mommy always told him he was a dumbass loser, and now it's being proven to be true. And that is his greatest fear. Talking about losers, let's talk about a loser. Remember little Petey Navarro? Petey Navarro was in the Trump administration. He's this guy that would always come on TV, roll his sleeves up, talking football terms like the Green Bay sweep. He was allegedly part of this whole insurrection thing and the fake electors and all that shit. Well, Petey Navarro was asked to testify in front of the January 6th committee, and he said, nope, don't have to do that because we have presidential immunity, or not presidential immunity, executive privilege. That's what he said. Well, the fact is he didn't have executive privilege, and it was proven that he didn't have executive privilege, but he doubled down and tripled down. He went to court for contempt of Congress. Motherfucker lost. And then he was sentenced to 4 months in prison. Now, since that time, he's tried to appeal, of course, and while he's appealing, he's hoping he could stay out of prison, much like Steve Bannon has. But the cards weren't falling in his favor on this time. He kept getting appeals court saying, no, you got to go to jail, motherfucker. And he took one last shot. He sent it up to the Supreme Court. Oh, he knew that Donnie's buddies at the Supreme Court would save him. But the fact of the matter is, the Chief Justice, John Robert, looked at it and said, yeah, we're not going to even look at this. Sorry. Good luck, Petey. So Petey took his last shot, and today, they're going to take Petey Navarro off to jail for his 4-month term. So he's bound for prison. Supreme Court basically denied an effort for him to remain free, and he is profoundly fucked. He seemed real nervous about going to prison. He spent a lot of money on legal fees. None of it did him any good because he's, well, going to fucking prison. Navarro was sentenced to 4 months in prison in January after he defied the subpoena from the House Select Committee. The former aide was convicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress in September, following a short trial after prosecutors argued Navarro had acted as if he were above the law, and he certainly did. He even said he was above the law. We have executive privilege. Well, Donnie Trump is no longer president, and Petey, you never had executive privilege. You can double down, you can lie, you can do all that shit, but when it comes down to it, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Now, Chief Justice John Robert turned down Navarro's bid to stay out of prison on appeal on Monday after he argued that the former president, Donald Trump, told him to invoke executive privilege to avoid testimony. Oh, having Donald Trump tell you something is supposed to give you some credit. Donald Trump's a pathological liar, and he doesn't mind if you get crucified as long as he saves his ass. You didn't know that? All you had to do was watch how he behaves, but you got sucked into it. You fucked around and found out. Now, a judge initially rejected Navarro's efforts to remain free on appeal, saying the court had found no evidence Trump had ever invoked privilege. Yeah, see, that's the thing. We keep hearing about this privilege thing, but in order to do that, a president has to invoke it, actually has to do something. This is similar to declassifying documents. You can't just think it in your mind and say, oh, those are declassified. You actually have to do something. As much as you want to argue about executive privilege or declassifying documents, there has to be a paper trail. There has to be something done. And Petey, that's where you fucked up. There is no paper trail because there was no executive privilege because Donald Trump didn't evoke it, probably because he didn't know any better. Now, a panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals agreed that Navarro must begin his sentence after he failed to show any compelling legal argument likely to result in a reversal, a new trial, a sentence that does not include a term of imprisonment, or a reduced sentence of imprisonment. I see no basis to disagree, Roberts wrote in his brief decision. Now, Navarro's attorney had argued to the Supreme Court that executive privilege, if invoked, should have extended to Trump's aides and that legal questions remained about how those protections should be considered. Here's the deal. He was charged with contempt of Congress. Why did he get charged with contempt of Congress? Because he was asked to testify and he didn't show up. He refused to show up. So that's pretty cut and dry. That's pretty black and white. He did commit the crime. That's why he's going to jail. Now, the Justice Department, however, issued its own arguments that executive privilege belongs to the executive branch, not to an individual present or former employee. Navarro must report to federal prison in Miami today. He will be the first senior Trump aide to serve a sentence over his role in challenging the 2020 election. Now, former White House advisor Steve Bannon has also been convicted of contempt of Congress, but has remained free while he appeals the decision. And I'm sure Navarro's bitching about that. Well, how come Steve gets to stay out? Well, that's a question we'd all like to ask. And there's got to be a point in time when he misses his appeal and that dumb motherfucker goes to jail. Steve Bannon is probably the only human that will look better coming out of jail than when he went in. That is one greasy, grubby, grimy piece of shit. I don't know what he does with himself, but he isn't much for hygiene or taking care of himself. And that's coming from a guy who's pretty lazy about that himself. Now, since we're talking about Florida and Navarro having to go to jail in Florida, let's talk about Judge Aileen Cannon in the classified documents case. She may be pushing the limits a little far at this point. We might be getting closer to the stage where Jack Smith sends her to the 11th Circuit. Don't know for sure, but she keeps fucking up and keep doing things that benefit Donald Trump and are against the law. Judge Aileen Cannon appears to be inviting a future jury to pore over Donald Trump's seized classified materials, despite them being national secrets, while putting constraints on her own duties. Now, in her most recent filing Monday, Cannon also wants to task jurors with figuring out if the former president can rightfully consider the documents as his personal property. That's a hard no. You don't get an option to negotiate that or work that out. The law simply states that all the documents are owned by the people of this country, not by Donald Trump. There is no black and white there either. It's not up for argument, but apparently she thinks it is. Now, this is a claim she is supposed to be deciding after he used it as an argument for his case to be dismissed. In prosecution of a former president for allegedly retaining documents, her filing says a jury is permitted to examine a record retained by a former president in her personal possession at the end of his or her presidency and make a factual finding as to whether the government has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that it is personal or presidential, using the definition set forth in the Presidential Records Act. So those military or defense documents about Israel or whoever or about America, you're going to argue somehow, some point, that that is personal paperwork. That's absolutely bullshit. This woman, Aileen Cannon, is either the most corrupt individual or the dumbest individual or a combination thereof. Now, the filing was slammed by lawyer and Trump critic George Conway. Okay, I've seen enough, he wrote on Threads. Not only should Aileen Cannon not be sitting on this case, but she should not be sitting on a federal bench at all. This is utterly nuts. This second scenario is legally insane, wrote national security lawyer Brad Moses. If that were the case, the just grant Trump's motion to dismiss of PRA grounds, so DOJ bring it to the 11th Circuit for a quick reversal. Upon losing the 2020 presidential election, the former president squirreled away boxes at the White House of the White House documents and hoarded them in Mar-a-Lago, of course. I think we're getting to that point where she's gone too far. And they really have to take this to the 11th Circuit before the trial starts. Well, thankfully, they're trying to delay it as much as they can. But she may have just gone too far. Maybe she's jumped the shark, if you will. And hopefully, Jack Smith is ready to do what he needs to do by going to the 11th Circuit and get this dumb bitch kicked out of there. I know that's not very respectful to call a judge a dumb bitch, but she is, quite frankly, a dumb bitch. And she's obviously corrupt and biased. She shouldn't, as George Conway said, she shouldn't be on this case. She shouldn't be on the federal bench at all. All right. Former President Trump's hush money judge. There was a motion made by Donald Trump's lawyers that said, yeah, in this upcoming Manhattan District case, you shouldn't let Michael Cohen or Stormy Daniels or let a lot of this evidence in on the case. He doesn't want the most compelling witnesses to testify in this case. Well, of course he doesn't. They're going to prove that he is guilty. So he made the motion to Judge Juan Marchand, and Juan Marchand said, fuck that. In two separate decisions issued Monday, Judge Juan Marchand ruled on more than a dozen requests between the two sides to exclude various evidence. Marchand's ruling allows Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office to tell the jury a broad story about three people who say they were paid hush money by Cohen, Trump's former fixer, to stay quiet about their salacious accusations against Trump. Now, the trial was supposed to start next Monday, but has since been delayed for at least a few weeks after new relevant documents came to light. The case still could head to a jury this spring and become Trump's first criminal trial. Theoretically, it's looking to start mid-April, say around April 15th. Now, Bragg alleges Trump illegally falsified business records when he reimbursed Cohen for the payment to Daniels, an adult film actress who claimed to have had an affair with Trump. Trump, who denies the affair, pleaded not guilty to all 34 charges. Now, prosecutors have looked to portray the payment as part of a broader catch and kill scheme to quash negative gossip about Trump leading up to the 2016 presidential election. Marchand's ruling enables prosecutors at trial to not only call Daniels and Cohen as witnesses, but also former Playboy model Karen McDougal and former Trump World Tower doorman Dino Sajudin. Both claim they were also paid off to withhold salacious accusations about Trump. Now, what Trump wanted to do is he wanted to block the jury from hearing from Cohen, the three others who were allegedly paid off. Marchand rejected those demands, but he did agree to place some limitations on what Sajudin and McDougal can testify about. Unless the people provide a satisfactory offer of proof, the testimony by or about Sajudin and McDougal will be limited to the fact of and may not explore the underlying details of what allegedly transpired between those individuals and the defendant, Marchand wrote, adding that he would explain in more detail at the start of the trial. Now, Trump has denied the underlying accusations. I didn't do it. It's all a hoax. It's all a fake. Though Trump's lawyers sought to block each of them from testifying and attack their credibility, Trump's attorneys left the most brutal attacks for Cohen, portraying him as a liar who could not be allowed to take the stand given his past legal troubles. But therein lies the interesting thing. Yes, Cohen has legal problems. Yes, Cohen did get convicted. And yes, he did go to jail. But why did he go to jail? Because he was lying for fucking Donald Trump. The audacity to suggest his credibility is lacking when he went to jail for lying for Donald Trump. Marchand further ruled that any testimony regarding Cohen's past guilty plea would not open the door for Trump's counsel to introduce evidence regarding past federal election commission complaints dismissed against him or the Department of Justice decision not to charge him with campaign finance violations. And you know that's what they would do. They'd get him up there and they'd do everything they could to discredit him. Now they're going to try to do that anyways, but they're limited now in what they can do. That doesn't mean they won't try, but I have a feeling that Juan Marchand isn't going to be playing too many fucking games with these clowns. They aren't going to get away with the things they got away in civil court. Marchand wrote, there are countless reasons why the FEC and DOJ could have decided not to pursue enforcement against the defendant, all having nothing to do whether he's guilty of the charges here against him. The judge's pair of rulings Monday also resolved a handful of other evidentiary disputes between the two sides. And, you know, that's the thing with Juan Marchand. He's all business. He's getting down to business, and he wants to get this trial going, presumably around mid-April, and get this motherfucker done. As I say, Juan Marchand is a much different kind of judge than we've seen in the civil cases. He's a very serious judge. This is about criminal cases, and he isn't going to allow Donald Trump to fuck around. And that's what's going to be interesting. Donald Trump is going to have to sit in this courtroom every day for 2.5 months or thereabouts. He's going to have to shut his fucking mouth, or they're going to put him away someplace where he can't talk. All right, Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, confirmed to Fox News that he is considering backing a national abortion ban. Yeah, you go ahead and do that, Donnie. That'll get you some votes. Now, in an interview with Trump that aired Sunday night, Media Buzz host Howard Kurtz brought up a recent New York Times report that claimed Trump was considering a 16-week national abortion ban. The former president reportedly said in a private conversation shared with the Times that he likes the idea of a 16-week federal ban because it's an even 4 months. Now, when Kurtz asked Trump if he thought a 16-week national ban would be politically acceptable, Trump said, we're going to find out, and pretty soon I'm going to be making a decision. Yeah, what, 2 weeks? I'd be surprised if he comes out with an answer because he can't win for losing on this one. If he comes out with a 16-week abortion ban, he's going to piss off the evangelicals and lose all those mouth-breathing motherfuckers. But if he comes out and says he's for an abortion ban altogether, well, there's just 75% of the country that thinks that's a fucking bad idea. It's a no-win situation for Donald Trump. He said, I would like to see if we could make both sides happy. Well, that's not possible. Short of a complete abortion ban, the evangelicals will never be happy, and that is part of your base. You can't make both sides happy. I mean, the whole point of Roe v. Wade was kind of a compromise. So now you shut it down, pissing off most of the country, and now you want to see if there's a compromise. Not because you give a fuck about abortion bans, it's because you're seeing it's not working for you, it's hurting you. Something you should have recognized before you even opened your fucking orange mouth, but you didn't. So now you're trying to backtrack and try to smooth things over. Well, Donnie, smoothing things over and making things better, that's not your strong point. It really isn't. You said, I would like to see if we can make both sides happy. Well, good luck with that. Look, a lot of things were done with Roe by killing it. Number one, we brought it back to our states. But now you're talking about a national ban. So you lied to us. Trump continued adding that the Supreme Court justices did something that from a lot of standpoints is extremely good when they repealed the federal abortion protections in 2022. It did a lot of things that are good. What is that? He's good at saying, well, they did good things, they did bad things. He never talks in specifics. He has no specifics. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That motherfucker is just riffing, hoping against hope he can make enough people happy to get elected president. Sorry, Donnie, that's not going to work. Now, the former president did give a clear answer, oh, big surprise, on whether he supports the 16-week abortion ban, but it was clear that he supports the three exceptions often included in abortion bans: rape, incest, and to save the life of a pregnant person. Well, that's problematic too because the evangelicals don't buy that shit. He's counting on the evangelicals and he's pissing them off. But he has no choice because he knows it's pissing off 70% of the other folks. Here's what Donnie has to understand: you don't get to take a right away from half the country and then say, oh, we'll make it a little softer for you. These people aren't going to be happy until they get Roe v. Wade back and they get Roe v. Wade codified. You're not going to be able to soft soap them and say, well, we're not giving it to you back, but it won't be so rough because we'll give you these things. That's not going to be enough. That's not going to help. It's not going to fix things for Donald Trump. And I think he knows that, but he really has no other option to do. Now, the Trump campaign did not immediately respond to Huffington Post's request for a comment. Now, during his Fox News appearance, Trump also claimed Democrats are the extreme party when it comes to abortion care, alleging that the party supports abortion in the ninth month and even after birth, which is a lie. Abortion after birth is murder, which is already illegal in the U.S. Additionally, a 2002 law codified that infants have the same rights and protections as any other human. Well, of course they do. Abortions do sometimes occur in the second or third trimester, but Republicans typically don't talk about why people may need care later in the pregnancy. The majority of people who need later care are young people with few resources and support people with wanted pregnancies who are given a fatal fetal diagnosis, and people who are pushed further into their pregnancy due to their barriers to care, like having to travel outside their home state. Abortion later in pregnancy is also extremely rare. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, around 1% of abortions occur at 21 weeks or later, and the subset of abortions in the third trimester after 26 weeks is even smaller. And again, the reason it happens at those times, very rarely, is that there are some catastrophic things going on with the baby. Now, time and again, Donald Trump has shown us who he is, and we believe him. Mini Timaraju, president and CEO of Reproductive Freedom for All, formerly NARAL, and said in a statement responding to Trump's Fox News interview, these latest comments reaffirm what we've long known. If given the chance, he will enact a national ban on abortion. That's why it's imperative that we reelect the Biden-Harris ticket and deliver congressional majorities to lock our right to abortion care into federal law. That's the only fix here, guys. Even if the Republicans said, well, we'll negotiate, we'll compromise, you know they lie to you. They will tell you anything and then shove that down your throat. Shove it right up your ass. That's what they'll do. They do it every time to the Democrats. They do it to us, the people of this country. So why would we trust them? All right. Now, speaking on Jack, which is a podcast that focuses on the prosecutions being led by Special Counsel Jack Smith, former FBI Director Andy McCabe, and legal analyst Allison Gill explained why the Justice Department isn't indicting Donald Trump's co-conspirators yet for allegedly helping him defraud the United States with his effort to illegally remain in power. We're talking about sitting members of Congress, talking about Ginny Thomas and the like. The 2020 election case Trump faces isn't exclusively about him, as several high-ranking officials, activists, legal advisors, and campaign strategists were part of a move to overturn the vote. One listener to the podcast brought up the matter that Ginny Thomas, spouse of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who was among those pressing the White House chief of staff to protest election counts. Thomas sent an email to Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers and 20 to 30 other lawmakers to work together to overturn Trump's defeat in the state. Clearly, she is culpable. The listener then speculated that Smith's decision to not indict Thomas or any of the other unindicted co-conspirator in Smith's indictment of Trump in order to avoid a conflict with the United States Supreme Court. McCabe explained that prosecutors simply don't work this way. This isn't about Jack Smith trying to prove a point with the Supreme Court or scoring a victory against what might be a victory or two with the Supreme Court, said McCabe. So my guess is if there is such a plan to indict co-conspirators, the plan has been all along put it off till after the election. And that makes a certain amount of sense. He said that most important part of the effort for Smith was that the American people deserve to know the facts before the 2024 election, and a jury should hear the issues. Everything else is superfluous or secondary, said McCabe. Gill noted that if anyone else is indicted, they would file to consolidate with Trump's case and that it would add to even more delays for the Trump case. Something we've been talking about for some time. They only indicted Donald Trump in the DC case because they want to keep it simple, keep the chaos out, and keep from other people infringing on what they're trying to do with Donald Trump. There's no mad rush to get these other people. I think what McCabe is saying that we get Donald Trump prosecuted and convicted, and after the election, we go after the Ginny Thomases and the sitting members of Congress. That seems reasonable. That makes some sense. It may not be what we like because we want to see everybody get indicted, but like McCabe said, if we indict other people, then they're going to want to join in with Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump will have all kinds of reasons to delay it even more and more. Jack Smith wants to nail Donald Trump, get that fucking thing done, and then go after the other motherfuckers. And think of how it's going to be if they get them after the election, when the Republicans don't have any power, when the Supreme Court has to sit there and just sit on their hands waiting for Congress to either stack the court or start some impeachments. That's when the Democrats will have a lot of pressure on the Supreme Court. They aren't going to be able to get away with a lot when we get to that point. So if you've been worried about the sitting members of Congress and all that, I think Andy McCabe gave us some good advice that just sit back, let's focus on Trump. And then when Trump is done, then we'll see some of these people in Congress and the Ginny Thomases and Roger Stones and such coming up for indictments and ultimately going on trial. And when the election is over, all these people that are going on trial will have far less power than they might right now. So that seems like a good plan, and it seems like a reasonable plan. Like I say, we want it to rush, we want it to hurry, but Jack Smith is going to do with his trials whatever is most effective. And since Donald Trump is the focal point at this point, let's focus on him, get that motherfucker convicted. Then we'll worry about the others after the election, because with those folks, there is no problem with time sensitivity. Time isn't running out on them. They're going to have to be sitting around seeing Donald Trump get convicted, the Republicans losing in November, and they are going to be shitting themselves. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.